You don't belong here, ma'am. This area's off limits. The words cracked through the dense, oil-scented air like a gunshot. Lieutenant Ethan Cole's voice carried across the echoing metal chamber, sharp and defensive, slicing through the hum of idle machinery. He stood rigid in the narrow walkway, squared shoulders gleaming under the fluorescent lights, the insignia on his collar polished to perfection. Across from him, Dr. Katherine Hayes didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed locked on the massive turbine before her, a gray monolith of steel and silence that had once been the beating heart of the destroyer USS Valor. The engine should have been roaring by now, propelling 10,000 tons of warship across the Pacific. Instead, it sat dead and heavy, a monument to failure. The air was thick with heat and frustration. Somewhere overhead, a fan whined helplessly. Katherine set her tool bag down with a solid thud that made several nearby sailors glance up. "I know exactly where I am, Lieutenant," she said, her tone calm, controlled, and edged with quiet authority. She pulled a badge from her pocket and held it up to the light. "Technical Representative, Naval Systems Division?" Cole frowned. "I was told the tech rep was a man named Harris." "Harris is sitting in Norfolk trying to fix your schematics from a desk," Katherine replied evenly. "He sent me instead." A ripple of silence passed through the engineering crew, men and women exhausted from 3 sleepless days of failure. They'd tried everything to restart the Valor's engines, and nothing had worked. Now the civilian woman had walked in like she owned the place, and everyone could feel the collision coming. Before Cole could argue, Katherine crouched beside the cold turbine and unzipped her bag. Inside were tools, some standard Navy issue, others worn smooth with age, modified by hand. One in particular caught the lieutenant's eye, a wrench with a curved, hand-forged head wrapped in cracked leather. "That's not Navy equipment," Cole snapped. "You'll use only approved tools while under my supervision." Katherine looked up at him, one eyebrow lifting just slightly. "Your approved tools haven't fixed a thing in 72 hours, Lieutenant." He took a step forward, anger rising like steam. "You'll show me your work order and wait until I verify your clearance." She stood, slow and deliberate. Her red coveralls were streaked with grease and salt stains, the kind that didn't come from office work. She handed him a folded sheet of paper. "Here's your authorization." Cole's eyes flicked down. The signature at the bottom made him blink twice. "Fleet Admiral Robert Hawthorne." His throat tightened. "The Admiral himself?" "He wants his ship moving," Katherine said quietly. "I'm here to make that happen." The lieutenant's pride warred with his orders. "Fine," he muttered, "but I'll be watching." "No improvisations." Katherine didn't answer. Her fingers brushed the leather-wrapped wrench, its familiar texture grounding her in memory. For a heartbeat, the engine room around her blurred into another. A night years ago, thick with smoke and seawater. A desperate fight to keep a ship alive. She'd made that wrench then, out of scrap and instinct while chaos raged around her. It had saved lives. She looked up again. "You can follow your manual, Lieutenant," she said softly. "Or you can follow results. Only one will get this ship home. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to Courage and Honor, Veterans TV, so you never miss these fascinating tales of courage. And let us know in the comments where you're watching today." The hum of the ventilation system filled the silence that followed. Cole's jaw clenched, but before he could reply, another voice cut through the tension. "No need to check her credentials, Lieutenant. I'll vouch for her." Every head turned toward the doorway. Master Chief William Bill Thorne stood there, arms crossed, his gray hair damp with sweat, his face unreadable. The kind of man who'd spent more time at sea than on land. His presence alone commanded silence. "Dr. Katherine Hayes," he said slowly, tasting the name. "Didn't think I'd ever meet you in person." Katherine smiled faintly. "Chief Thorne, you served on the Independence, didn't you? I remember reading your logs. You once ran a turbine on a cracked impeller for 6 days straight." Thorne chuckled, a gravelly sound that carried warmth beneath the gruffness. "And you're the one who wrote the workaround that kept her from blowing apart." "I thought that was just a sea story." Cole looked between them, bewildered. "You two know each other?" "Not exactly," Thorne said. "But everyone in the fleet knows her name. The woman who could make an engine purr after everyone else gave up." A quiet murmur rippled through the crew. Katherine didn't respond, but she crouched again beside the turbine, running her fingers gently over the metal casing as if listening to its pulse. Her touch was slow, deliberate. "The temperature's off," she murmured. "And the resonance in the casing." She tapped lightly, listening to the faint metallic ring. Is half a hertz too high? That means our problem isn't just a fuel imbalance, Cole frowned. We ran full diagnostics. Everything checked out. Diagnostics only see what they're told to look for, Katherine said softly. Engines aren't just machines, Lieutenant. They're living systems. You have to listen to them. Her words should have sounded arrogant, but they didn't. The way she spoke, quiet, certain, like someone who'd earned the right to believe it, held the room captive. Then, breaking the silence, a voice crackled over the ship's intercom. Engineering, status update. Cole grabbed the handset. Still offline, sir. Verifying contractor credentials before proceeding. A pause. Then the reply came, cold and clipped. You have authorization from Fleet Command. Proceed immediately. Katherine smiled faintly. Looks like the Admiral's not a patient man. Cole exhaled through his teeth. Fine, proceed, but I'm logging every step under protest. Fair enough, she said, pulling on her gloves. Just don't stand in my light. The next minutes unfolded in near silence. The rhythmic clink of tools, the low hum of the turbine, and the faint whisper of her breath. She moved with a surgeon's precision, focused, graceful, almost reverent. Panels came loose, cables shifted, sensors blinked back to life under her touch. Then she froze. Her hand hovered over a small coupling near the atomizer line. Here, she whispered. Cole leaned closer. That looks fine. Katherine didn't answer. She picked up her old wrench and turned the bolt a fraction. A hiss escaped, barely audible but enough to make the chief stiffen. The sharp scent of vapor filled the air. Fine, Katherine said quietly. Isn't always fine, Lieutenant. She tilted the part toward the light. A thin hairline fracture ran across the metal, almost invisible. Gasps rippled through the crew. That's been leaking microdroplets into your injector line, she explained. The sensors don't catch it because it's within tolerance, but it's enough to trip your safety system before ignition. Thorne stared at her, awe softening his rough features. How in God's name did you see that? Katherine smiled faintly. You just have to listen when a machine tells you where it hurts. Cole said nothing. His arrogance had drained away, leaving only quiet respect and the uncomfortable sting of realization. Above them, faint and distant, came the steady thump of helicopter rotors. The sound grew louder, closer, vibrating through the deck like a heartbeat. Thorne's expression hardened. That'll be the Admiral, he said. And judging by the sound of those blades, he's not coming for a tour. The thunder of the rotors grew into a deafening roar as the helicopter descended onto the upper deck. Loose papers and fine dust swirled through the engine room vents, dancing in the fluorescent light like drifting ash. The sailors stood frozen in place, glancing toward the hatchway as the steady clang of boots echoed closer, measured, deliberate, heavy with authority. No one spoke. Even Lieutenant Cole, moments ago the embodiment of self-assured command, now straightened his posture, trying not to betray the unease twisting in his chest. The door swung open with a sharp metallic scrape. Admiral Robert Hawthorne stepped through. He didn't need to speak for the room to fall silent. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver hair neatly cropped, his mere presence carried decades of service and expectation. 2 Marine escorts flanked him, their rifles slung but ready, the sound of their synchronized steps reverberating across the steel floor. Admiral on deck, Cole barked automatically. At ease, Hawthorne said, his voice quiet but cutting through the room more sharply than any shout could. His gaze swept across the assembled crew, then settled on the disassembled turbine and the woman standing beside it. Katherine straightened, wiping her gloved hands on a rag, her movements unhurried. The calm in her face contrasted with the tension vibrating through everyone else. So, Hawthorne began, stepping closer, you're the reason my ship's been sitting idle for the last 8 hours? Technically, Katherine replied evenly. I'm the reason it's about to move again. A flicker of amusement so faint most missed it, tugged at the corners of the Admiral's mouth. That's a bold statement, Doctor. Not a statement, she said. A result. Chief Thorne took a step forward. She found the fault, sir. A microfracture in the injector feed. Diagnostics couldn't detect it. Hawthorne's gaze shifted toward Cole. Diagnostics couldn't detect it? Cole swallowed. No, sir. She located it manually. The Admiral's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. Manually, he repeated as if tasting the word. You listened for it, didn't you? Katherine gave a small, almost apologetic smile. Machines talk, Admiral. Most people just never learn the language. For a heartbeat, something softened in his face. Curiosity, perhaps even admiration, before his military composure slid neatly back into place. He crouched beside the open turbine, examining the faint crack she'd exposed. His gloved finger traced the line with precision born of long experience. "I've seen this type of fracture before," he murmured, "in the Bering Strait during the blackout mission. We lost an entire vessel because no one caught it in time." He rose slowly, his eyes narrowing with a mix of memory and calculation. "How did you even suspect this?" "The harmonics were off," Katherine said, her voice low but steady. "A balanced system hums at perfect resonance. This one was half a hertz sharp, too small for sensors, but you can hear it if you know what to listen for." A long silence followed. Then, with a short nod, Hawthorne turned to Thorne. "Replace that line and seal the system. I want propulsion back online within the hour." "Aye, sir," Thorne said, motioning for his crew to move. The Admiral turned as if to leave, then paused. His tone shifted, not cold, but weighted. "Dr. Hayes," he said over his shoulder, "when you're finished here, meet me on the bridge. We have something to discuss." Katherine tilted her head. "Am I in trouble already?" "That depends," Hawthorne replied without turning, "on whether you're as good with people as you are with machines." The door shut behind him, leaving only the sound of the ventilation and the restless energy of the room. Lieutenant Cole exhaled first. What the hell was that supposed to mean? Thorne gave him a knowing grin. "It means she just got herself noticed by the brass, Lieutenant." Katherine ignored them both, crouching beside the turbine again. Her hands moved with practiced confidence as she tightened the new coupling into place. The low hum of power began to crawl through the deck plates, soft and growing, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant stirring awake. The vibration deepened, building into a rhythmic thrum. The overhead lights flickered once, then steadied. The Valor was alive again. Katherine leaned back on her heels, watching the monitor. Pressure stabilized, fuel ratios balanced, ignition steady. A faint smile touched her lips. "Welcome back," she murmured to the ship, almost affectionately. Thorne crossed his arms, a glint of admiration in his eyes. "You did it, Doctor." "Not me," she said softly, still watching the gauges. "Just the right wrench in the right hands." Cole lingered a few feet away, visibly trying to reconcile what he'd just witnessed. His earlier arrogance had melted into grudging respect, though he still couldn't resist the need to fill the silence. "You always this lucky?" Katherine met his gaze calmly. "Luck is what people call it when they don't understand the work." The chief laughed under his breath, clapping Cole on the shoulder hard enough to make the younger man wince. "She's got you there, son." Moments later, the intercom buzzed again. "Bridge to engineering. Status?" Thorne grabbed the receiver. "Engines online, sir. Full power restored." A pause. Then Hawthorne's voice came through, measured but with an undertone of satisfaction. "Understood. Prepare for movement, and send Dr. Hayes to the bridge immediately." Katherine peeled off her gloves, cleaned her hands on a rag, and straightened her collar. "Guess that's my cue," she said. Thorne nodded. "He doesn't summon civilians often. Must be something big." As she started toward the hatch, Cole's voice followed her, quieter now. "For what it's worth, Doctor." "Good work." She paused, looked back, and smiled faintly. "Careful, Lieutenant." That almost sounded like respect. He chuckled despite himself. Katherine disappeared through the hatchway, her footsteps fading into the corridor above. The bridge of the USS Valor felt like another world compared to the heat and grit below. Cool air, low hums of electronics, the steady rhythm of data streams pulsing across polished glass consoles. Officers moved with precision, their voices low, disciplined. Outside the broad viewport, the endless expanse of the Pacific stretched black and silver under the first light of dawn. Katherine entered, boots clicking softly against the metal deck. The bridge crew glanced at her, curious, cautious. Civilians didn't belong here, not beside an admiral. Hawthorne stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back as he watched the horizon. The rising sun threw gold light across his face, deepening the lines carved by decades of command. "You fixed it," he said without turning. "She's running clean now," Katherine replied. "Fuel balance restored, pressure steady. Your backup regulators compensated for the leak." "Good." He turned slightly, eyes still distant, watching the shimmer of dawn break across the water. "Chief Thorne confirmed your readings. The ship's ready to move. The moment lingered, quiet, suspended between duty and something else. You know, he said finally, there are only 3 people in this fleet who could have diagnosed that failure without instruments. 2 of them are retired. His gaze shifted to her fully now. And the 3rd is standing in front of me. Katherine gave a small, polite smile. So you've read my file. I wrote part of it. She blinked, caught off guard. You what? Hawthorne's expression remained unreadable. You think your clearance was an accident? I approved it myself. Years ago, back when you were still consulting for the Independence rebuild, Katherine frowned. That was nearly 10 years ago. I didn't even think command noticed. We noticed, he said evenly. A civilian who saved a destroyer using a handmade wrench and a formula scrawled on a ration pack doesn't go unnoticed. She folded her arms, half defensive, half intrigued. So you pulled me back out of civilian life for nostalgia? A hint of a smile ghosted across his face. If only. No, doctor. I brought you here because we have a problem. One that requires someone who listens better than the machines she fixes. He gestured toward the central tactical display. The holographic map flickered to life, an expanse of ocean marked with red pulses moving toward a cluster of islands. What is this? She asked. That, Hawthorne said quietly, is where we lost a reconnaissance drone 3 days ago. Lost? Katherine echoed, her brow furrowing as she studied the glowing map. The display pulsed with red markers that flickered like warning beacons over a jagged stretch of sea near the Marianas Trench. As in communications failure? Hawthorne shook his head slowly. Not just communications. The drone's telemetry cut off mid-transmission. Before that, it recorded something. Electromagnetic interference, seismic readings, frequencies that don't belong anywhere near a tectonic fault. She leaned closer, squinting. A natural quake? Possibly, Hawthorne said. But our analysts don't think so. They believe it was deliberate. That last word hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. Katherine straightened, folding her arms across her chest. Deliberate? You're talking about a weapon. I'm talking about something we don't understand yet, the Admiral replied. And I don't send men into unknowns without someone who does. The ship's hum filled the silence that followed. Outside, sunlight began to filter through the horizon, bathing the bridge in soft amber light. Katherine's expression stayed neutral, but her mind was already racing, calculating, analyzing, piecing fragments together like blueprints. You want me to go there, she said finally. Yes, Hawthorne confirmed. We deploy at 1800 hours. You'll lead diagnostics aboard the Arclight submersible. Chief Thorne will assist. I'll have a briefing team waiting in 1 hour. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. You could have sent any number of naval engineers. I could have, Hawthorne said, but they wouldn't hear what you might hear down there. Katherine hesitated. It wasn't fear in her eyes, it was recognition. The faint tremor of someone standing once again at the edge of an old ghost. You think this is connected to the Independence Project? She said quietly. The Admiral didn't deny it. The signal pattern we intercepted matches something from a classified file, one sealed after that incident. Her pulse quickened. That's impossible. The data was destroyed. Apparently not. He tapped the console. If the readings are accurate, whatever's down there remembers you. The words hit her like a cold wave. She stared at the glowing map, its pulsing red marks suddenly feeling alive like a heartbeat echoing from beneath the ocean floor. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Then it's time we find out what survived. The Arclight waited below deck, sleek, black, and silent. Built for deep-sea research and classified operations, it looked more like a predator than a vessel. Its smooth hull shimmered faintly under the floodlights, the steel skin absorbing reflections like ink. Along its side, Arclight 02 was etched in matte silver letters. Katherine stood beside the access ramp, suited now in a reinforced Navy jumpsuit. The heavy air in the launch bay smelled of salt and machine oil. Engineers moved with precision around her, tightening clamps, checking oxygen valves, shouting readings over the noise of compressors. Chief Thorne approached, carrying a data pad. Fuel cells green, oxygen scrubbers at 98%, Navlink synced with Valor's control tower. Launch in 20, she nodded. Pilot? Lieutenant Jake Barrett, Thorne said, his gravelly tone carrying a hint of humor. Young, cocky, a little reckless, but he's the best we've got below 500 meters. Katherine arched an eyebrow. Reckless isn't exactly comforting. It isn't, Thorne agreed, a half smile tugging at his lips. But recklessness keeps people alive when logic runs out. Before she could respond, Hawthorne's voice cut across the bay. Dr. Hayes. The Admiral descended the steel staircase from the command walkway above. Even in the dim light, he looked impossibly composed. He carried a sealed black case under one arm, the kind of equipment that screamed classified. This stays with you at all times, he said, handing it to her. Encrypted frequency analyzer. Tuned to the signal pattern we detected, Katherine took it carefully. The case was heavier than it looked, unnaturally cold to the touch. You have any idea what we'll find when we trace it? Hawthorne's jaw tightened. That's what I'm counting on you to tell me. He turned slightly, his voice lowering. You'll have 3 crew. Dive limit, 4 hours. Past that, even Arclight's hull won't hold under pressure. 4 hours is plenty, she said, though she didn't sound convinced. As she started up the ramp, his voice stopped her. Hayes. She turned. Whatever's down there, Hawthorne said, his eyes steady. You've seen something like it before, haven't you? She hesitated, then nodded once. A long time ago. It almost killed us. The Admiral's expression hardened. Then make sure history doesn't repeat itself. 20 minutes later, the arc light slid beneath the surface, swallowed by the black. The sea closed over the viewports in a shimmering curtain of silver bubbles, the light from the Valor fading until it was nothing but a faint ghost above them. The submersible's interior hummed softly, bathed in the cool glow of instrument panels. Katherine sat beside Barrett at the pilot station, while Thorne manned diagnostics behind them. The descent was steady, smooth. Depth readouts scrolled across the display. 300 meters. 700. 1200. Signal strength holding steady, Thorne reported, his voice calm but tight with focus. We'll hit the interference field in about 2 minutes. Barrett smirked, his eyes flicking toward her without looking away from the controls. If this thing starts glowing, I'm surfacing, orders or not. Katherine shot him a dry look. That's comforting, he grinned. I try, then static. A sharp crackle like electricity tearing through water filled the cabin. The lights dimmed for a heartbeat before stabilizing. We just crossed the EM boundary, Thorne muttered. Sensors are degrading fast. Switch to manual. Katherine opened the sealed case, her breath catching slightly as the interior glowed faintly blue. The frequency analyzer pulsed like a heartbeat encased in glass. She set it on the console. Let's see if you're still out there. The device emitted a soft, rhythmic ping as it scanned through layers of interference. The pattern shifted, subtle then insistent. Barrett frowned. That's not random noise. Katherine leaned forward, eyes narrowing. No, it's structured. It's a signal. Thorne adjusted his readings. Structured how? It's not broadcasting, she murmured, voice soft as if speaking to herself. It's responding. The pings grew louder, faster. The waveform on the analyzer danced in rhythm. 3 short pulses, a pause, then 2 long ones, repeating. Barrett's hands froze on the controls. What the hell does that mean? Katherine's throat felt dry. It means something down there knows we're here. Outside, the dark water began to shimmer. Faint blue arcs of light appeared far below, tracing across the seafloor like veins of lightning under glass. Each pulse synchronized perfectly with the analyzer's rhythm. Dear God, Thorne whispered. Before anyone could react, the analyzer chimed sharply. Text scrolled across its small screen in perfect, sterile white identity match confirmed Morgan. Grace, EAC protocol resumed. The light in the analyzer shifted from blue to deep crimson. Katherine's heart stopped. That can't be, she whispered. Then, before she could move, the ocean itself seemed to convulse. The seafloor below erupted in a plume of silt and debris as a violent shockwave ripped through the abyss. The arclight lurched violently to one side. Barrett cursed, fighting the controls. Alarms screamed through the cabin. Hold her steady. Thorne barked, I'm trying. Barrett yelled, his knuckles white on the joystick. We're caught in a vortex. The sub spun, the analyzer's red light flashing like a heartbeat. And beneath the chaos, just for a second, came a whisper over the comms. Distorted, broken, but unmistakably human. Welcome back. Dr. Hayes. The arc light tumbled through the blackness, spinning end over end as the ocean roared around it. The sound was deafening. a symphony of groaning steel, shrieking alarms, and the dull, crushing pressure of the deep. Then, with a violent jolt, the sub broke free of the vortex's grip and slammed hard into something solid. For several long seconds, no one moved. The cabin lights flickered weakly, painting the crew in pulses of red emergency glow. Somewhere behind them, a hydraulic pump hissed in protest. Thorne's voice came first, rough and steady. "Systems check." "Power at 40%, Barrett coughed, one hand pressed to his side. "Hydraulics intact. Navigation offline. We're wedged in something. Looks like sediment." Katherine blinked through the haze of drifting dust, her chest tight. "Depth?" Thorne squinted at the cracked readout. 4,000 and change. "We're at the trench floor." The words hung in the air like a verdict. Slowly, she turned toward the viewport. The silt outside was beginning to clear, and through the clouded water a faint blue glow shimmered, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the ocean skin. She leaned forward, breath fogging the glass. Oh my God. The seafloor had opened beneath them, a vast circular chasm stretching hundreds of meters wide. At its center rose a structure smooth and curved, gleaming faintly as if carved from living metal. Its surface rippled with patterns of light, thin, glowing veins running in symmetrical arcs that seemed both mechanical and organic. "That's not a rock formation," Thorne muttered, softening his gravelly tone. "No," Katherine whispered. "It's a door." Barrett adjusted the spotlight controls, angling the beam through the murky water. The light swept across the structure, catching its etched lines, precise, impossibly uniform, like the circuitry of a machine designed by something far beyond human comprehension. "Signal spike," Thorne warned. "The analyzer's syncing with the sub's internal systems on its own." "What?" Katherine turned sharply. "How is that even—" The device on the console began to vibrate violently. The crimson light pulsed faster, spilling across the cabin like liquid fire. "Access level verified. Reactivation sequence initiated." "No." Katherine lunged forward, snapping the analyzer's lid shut. "Stop it!" But it was too late. A deep hum rolled through the ocean, a vibration so low it felt more than heard. The water outside began to shimmer, the blue veins across the structure brightening until they blazed with blinding intensity. The lines rotated, shifting into new configurations like the unlocking gears of a colossal vault. Barrett shielded his eyes. "It's opening!" A burst of light erupted outward in absolute silence, washing the viewport in pure white. Then, stillness. When Katherine's vision cleared, everything had changed. The water around them glowed faintly, filled with drifting motes of light like frozen fireflies. Through the viewport, she could see into the now open chamber, a vast hollow heart within the seafloor. And at its center floated a sphere. It was massive, half buried in sediment, its smooth metallic surface alive with flowing streams of amber and blue light. Around it lay the remains of something unrecognizable. Skeletal forms, maybe machines, maybe something else, scattered like the ghosts of a forgotten civilization. Katherine's pulse thundered in her ears. "It's intact." Thorne stepped up beside her, voice hushed. "You've seen this before," she hesitated. "Not this one, but something like it." On the Independence, Barrett turned sharply, disbelief cutting through his fear. "The Independence? That was an experimental propulsion system, wasn't it?" "It was," Katherine said. Her voice was low, tight. "Except it wasn't ours. We found fragments of something, buried deep, emitting resonance patterns no one could explain. We tried to replicate the energy signature, but—" She swallowed hard. "We didn't understand what we were copying. And the ship nearly tore itself apart," Thorne finished quietly. Katherine nodded once. "We thought the prototype was destroyed. But if this is still alive—" The sphere pulsed again, brighter this time, as though hearing her. The analyzer flared to life, casting red light across their faces. Lines of text scrolled across its screen in perfect synchronization with the sphere's rhythm. "Singularity node 07. Reactivation complete. Primary link. Hayes. Katherine secondary status awaiting directive." Barrett's breath caught. "It knows your name." Katherine stared, her skin pale against the glow. "It remembers who first woke it." Thorne's fingers tightened around the railing. "You're telling me that thing thinks—" "Not thinks," she whispered. "It listens." Her words barely left her mouth before the sphere shifted again. Its glow softened from blue to a warm, golden hue, and the low hum became harmonic, almost musical, a haunting sound that vibrated deep in their bones. Then a voice spoke. It came not through the comms, but through the hull itself, gentle, synthetic, yet impossibly human. Cycle complete. Integration restored. Barrett's eyes went wide. That's not us. System endured, the voice continued, calm and resonant. Awaiting synchronization. Directive. Catherine's breath caught. The phrasing was exact, word for word from her old logs. Her voice trembled. Directive? The last directive received, the voice replied, was, protect humanity from itself. Shall the sequence continue? The cabin went dead silent. Thorne turned slowly toward her, disbelief etched across his face. You wrote that command, didn't you? Katherine nodded faintly, her throat tight. It was the shutdown protocol, the final input before the system collapsed. I didn't think it recorded it. The analyzer pulsed faster, its tone deepening. The sphere outside vibrated in response, the water rippling like fabric. Whatever this thing is, Thorne said urgently, you can stop it, right? Katherine didn't answer. She was staring at the glowing sphere, torn between awe and dread. If I shut it down now, it might destroy itself. If I don't? Barrett's hands flew over the controls. Pressure's rising. We're getting seismic feedback. The walls creaked as the deep rumbled around them. The sphere's hum grew louder, no longer a whisper but a pulse, alive and building. Katherine pressed her hand against the viewport, her voice steady but soft, almost reverent. Then keep your promise, she whispered, not to her crew but to the intelligence before her. Protect us. The sphere's glow shifted, gold flooding outward like dawn breaking underwater. The hum rose to a resonant roar that filled the trench, and then movement. The entire chasm began to collapse inward, not in destruction, but transformation. The glowing veins along the seafloor spread like wildfire, sealing fractures, drawing energy inward. The arc light's alarm stopped abruptly as the pressure readings stabilized. Thorne stared at his monitors, stunned. The pressure, it's equalizing. It's repairing the fault lines. Katherine closed her eyes as the analyzer displayed one final message before the light faded. Directive accepted, system in standby. We will wait. The hum softened, then vanished entirely. For the first time since they'd entered the trench, there was silence. Minutes or maybe hours passed before Barrett spoke again. Whatever that was. It's over, right? Katherine looked through the viewport at the dark, silent sphere resting peacefully on the seafloor. No, she said softly. It's waiting. Hours later, the arc light broke the surface. The ocean greeted them with an eerie calm, as if the storm below had never existed. The early dawn spread across the horizon in streaks of molten gold and red, reflected off a glassy sea that seemed impossibly still. The sub's hatch hissed open with a rush of cool air, and Katherine Hayes climbed out first, soaked to the bone, exhausted, but alive. On the deck of the USS Valor, Admiral Hawthorne stood waiting, the wind tugging at his coat. His face, weathered and stoic, betrayed nothing, but his eyes told another story, relief mingled with apprehension. Report, he said, voice steady. Katherine held out the sealed frequency analyzer. The casing was dark now, its faint hum gone. It's dormant, she said simply. Or sleeping. Hawthorne repeated. She nodded. We didn't shut it down. It shut itself down. The Admiral took the case carefully, his gloved fingers brushing against its surface. Even without the glow, it felt unnaturally cold, as though it still remembered the abyss. What exactly did you find down there, Doctor? Katherine hesitated. Around them, sailors moved quietly, pretending not to listen, but failing. The sea stretched out endlessly, peaceful, indifferent, hiding its secrets. Finally, she said, something ancient, something that was never ours to begin with. He studied her face. You're saying it's alive? She looked toward the horizon, the rising sun reflected in her eyes. Not in the way we understand life. But it thinks, it remembers, and it waits. Hawthorne turned slightly, his gaze following hers out to sea. You sound almost like you pity it. I don't, Katherine said quietly. I think it pities us. There was a long silence. The waves lapped gently against the hull, and for a moment it felt like the entire ocean was holding its breath. Chief Thorne? The Admiral called. The old sailor, standing a few feet away with grease still streaked across his uniform, stepped forward and saluted. Engines are stable, sir. The Valor's running smooth. No interference from below. Good, Hawthorne said, then glanced at Barrett, who was leaning against a railing, still pale from the dive. Lieutenant? Sub's damaged but serviceable, Barrett said, managing a grin. We'll patch her up. He paused, then added, Whatever that thing was, sir, it knew her. It spoke to her like... He trailed off, shaking his head. Like it remembered her. Hawthorne's eyes returned to Katherine. It used your name? Yes, she said softly. And it repeated the final directive from Independence. Protect humanity from itself. The Admiral's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition, maybe even guilt. Those were your words. They were meant to be a shutdown order, she said. But it took them as a command to endure. It's been down there all this time, waiting for someone to come back. Hawthorne's voice dropped to almost a whisper. And now it has. Katherine didn't answer. She simply looked out over the water again, the horizon glowing brighter as the sun lifted higher. After a long silence, Hawthorne said, I'll have the data encrypted and transmitted to Fleet Command. This never leaves the room unless I authorize it. Katherine's tone hardened slightly. You think you can bury it again? He turned to face her fully. You think we should wake it? Her expression softened, part defiance, part exhaustion. I think pretending it isn't there doesn't make it less real. We built our machines by trying to imitate forces we don't understand. But what if that thing was built for the same reason? Hawthorne studied her in silence for a long moment, then nodded once. Get some rest, Doctor. You've earned it. She gave a faint smile. Rest isn't really my thing, Admiral. Then try pretending, he said. As she turned to leave, Thorne stepped beside her. You okay? Katherine managed a quiet laugh. Define okay. He gave a small grin. Alive, breathing, not glowing red. That last one's a maybe, she said, tapping the sealed analyzer in Hawthorne's hands as she walked past. The Admiral watched her go, his expression unreadable. When she disappeared below deck, he opened the analyzer again. The screen was black until, for just an instant, a faint line of text flickered across it. Standby mode engaged. Monitoring continues. Then it was gone, below deck. Katherine stood alone in the quiet observation room, staring out through the reinforced glass at the open sea. Her reflection stared back at her, tired eyes, streaks of salt and oil on her cheeks, hair escaping its bun. She thought about the voice, the pulse, the strange calm she'd felt when it spoke her name. It hadn't felt alien, it had felt familiar. There was a soft knock at the door. Thorne stepped in, a mug of coffee in hand. Brought you this, he said gruffly. She took it, wrapping her hands around the warmth. Thanks, Chief. He leaned against the wall, studying her quietly. You really think it was trying to help us? Katherine didn't answer immediately. She stared at the horizon, where the sunlight shimmered like molten metal on the water. Maybe, she said finally. Or maybe it was trying to stop us from hurting ourselves again. That was its last directive, after all. Thorne exhaled, shaking his head slowly. Hell of a guardian angel. Or a ghost, she murmured. They stood in silence for a while, listening to the rhythmic thrum of the engines, the sound of a ship that had almost died but didn't. After a moment, Katherine said, You ever wonder if some things were meant to stay buried? Every day, Thorne said. But buried things have a way of coming back up when you least expect it. She smiled faintly. That's what I'm afraid of. He started to leave, then paused. You really think it's still listening? Katherine's eyes stayed on the endless blue outside. I don't think it ever stopped. Later, as the Valor sailed west, cutting across calm seas, the ocean beneath her shimmered faintly. Miles below, at the bottom of the trench, the great sphere lay dormant, its surface dark except for a single pulsing ember at its core, one golden heartbeat. Then another, and in the faint hum of the deep something stirred softly, patiently, almost like a sigh. It would wait until humanity called again. Before we close this story, remember to subscribe to Courage and Honor, Veterans TV, so you never miss the next journey into courage, mystery, and the untold stories that live in the hearts of those who serve. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because every story, like every sailor, deserves to be remembered.